that moment, I was like, this woman, first of all, you will never have to work again. You will never struggle financially again because
Hey everybody, it's Vinty Mark and I am back with another video. But before we get started, I would like to invite you to check out today's outfit of the day. And if you have not had an opportunity, head over to themodestfitting.com and sign up for my newsletter so you can be notified when I drop my first collection of skirts and dresses featuring modesty, femininity, and beauty. But without further ado, let's begin. I'm continuing a long series on a book review that I'm doing called Fascinating Womanhood, written by Helen Andelin, and this segment of the book is called Sympathetic Understanding, and this whole chapter is really filled with a lot of useful information, but there was one particular point that I read and I was like, that's a very interesting thing to just kind of store in the back of my mind. So I'm going to start by reading what she wrote and then we'll discuss it more. It is interesting to note that when a woman is discouraged, her needs are different. Although she wants sympathy, she wants something more from a man. She looks to him for help and guidance in time of trouble. He is her guide and protector, and therefore her advisor and helper. A man is different. It is not her advice he hungers for, no matter how much he may need it, but her sympathy, comfort, and the restoration of his confidence in himself. And such is another difference between men and women. I think that most of us can probably relate to the idea of even I myself, when I'm really faced with something that's kind of challenging me or causing me emotional distress, I'll just kind of explain the situation to my husband, and he will immediately get into fix-it mode, where he'll be brainstorming solutions that I could try to alleviate whatever it is that's bothering me. And oftentimes that's a real value to women, because as she stated in the book, we are looking to our husbands to be kind of protectors, solution providers, people that can make our problems not be our problems anymore. And I think that if we're not careful, we can begin to think that when a wife does that to her husband, that it's received in the same way and that it holds the same value. And Helen Andelin is arguing that it is not quite the same. It's not a one-to-one exchange. And actually, when a man is in a state of distress, he's not looking for his wife to be his leader. He's looking for his wife to be a kind of foundation for him, something sturdy that he can stand on, and obviously not literally, but something firm that he can say, all right, I am actually okay. I have this support. She goes on to say, particularly, a particular time a man needs sympathetic understanding is when he faces failure. This can be a time of agony for a man, not so much for the failure itself as the humiliation. His status is at stake as never before, with the world and especially his wife. His protective feeling for his family, to provide for them adequately, is ever on his mind. If he must lower his standard of living, he faces the painful realization that he must subject them to humiliation and discomfort. The wife who can meet her husband's failure with understanding, sympathy, and has the fineness of character to adapt to humble circumstances meets a need in his life that nothing can equal. I thought it was really good that she mentioned here that the wife who can adapt to humble circumstances. I am really a proponent for women vetting the financial fitness of a man prior to marrying him. I think that it's a foolish woman who partners with a man who is unemployed or underemployed if there isn't some reasonable reason for that. I know some of the exceptions might include if you've got two young students who are in an excellent university and they get married before they graduate, that young husband probably doesn't have a job yet, but in that situation it makes sense. There aren't many reasons that a 35-year-old man, for instance, could give for why he is unemployed or underemployed. So I'm always a big proponent of women vetting the financial fitness of a man before tethering their boat to him, so to speak. However, once you become a man's wife, the vows include for richer or for poorer. And so while you do all due diligence to ensure that this man is in a position to financially provide, once you make your vows, your commitment to him does not hinge on his financial performance. And so I think that it's helpful, and not just helpful, but paramount, that she included that a wife who is able to adapt to humble circumstances, should a man, for no fault of his own, he's not a lazy guy who just refuses to work, it's just something terrible has happened, and the wife who can link arms with her husband and adapt to potentially a downsize, maybe not being able to go on vacations, maybe not being able to get her nails done, maybe having to do her own hair, maybe having to have really simple meals. Maybe you guys got to buy rice and beans in bulk. Maybe you got to buy your meat in bulk. Maybe it's not the choice parts of the meat, but maybe it's, what you can afford. A woman who's able to adapt and to adapt with a good attitude becomes an invaluable resource to a husband. And this is something that I myself have, that my husband and I have walked through together as well. We've been in situations where everything was great, and then the next day it wasn't. And we had to make that adjustment together. And while it was a struggle, it was an opportunity that strengthened our marriage. And in hindsight, I wonder, I even wonder, did God allow that temporary hardship for the purposes of strengthening the marital bond? I don't know. But that's certainly what it produced. She goes on to say, a man may never fully appreciate his wife until she is put to the test of his failure. His defeat is her golden opportunity to show her true worth. When a woman meets such a crisis with sympathetic understanding and the strength of a noble character, her husband can come to idolize her and love her as never before. I am releasing these videos slowly, but I've read much of this book already, and much of it previously. Matter of fact, this is me revisiting an old chapter, but I decided to revisit it because I was listening to a panel of men discuss what their experiences have been like entering into manhood, specifically entering into head of household roles now that they're married men and fathers. And one of the men said something so striking that I was like, I have to include it. I'm actually going to play the clip now.
True story. I was still doing the poetry thing. You guys know I run a poetry tour. And at the time, I was trying to get it. I was in over my head, and I wanted to do things in my flesh. And I had all these ideas. And so I tried the ideas, and I felt like God literally sabotaged me. So I took everything. I borrowed, took all my savings, everything. There was $130,000 on the line. I lost it in 3 days. Wow. When I came home, I told my wife.
How did that conversation go?
So this is what happened. She was like, okay, what in it? I was like, well, this happened. And I was like, $57. She was like, well, there should be this left. I was like, well, then this happened. And then I was $60,000. And she was like, well, there should be this left. And I was like, well, that happened. And now it's $9,000. She was like, well, then we don't have, we're renting. We don't have any money for rent. And I was like, we don't. And she was like, okay. Well, we're going to figure it out. Let's just pray and figure it out.
Look at God.
At that moment, I was like, this woman, first of all, you will never have to work again. You will never struggle financially again because you were willing to walk this out with me.
Yes.
And I realized it's okay. Yeah, men do need affirmation. Men do need women that are willing to celebrate their victories. But men need women that are willing to walk with them in the midst of trials.
And so you can see, again, I'm not 100% sure of when this book was published. For some reason, I keep thinking, yes, it was published in 1965. This is how you know that you've stumbled upon something that is a timeless truth. And while I didn't know Helen Anderlin, sometimes I feel like the Lord just like drops wisdom in someone's mind and gives them the ability to share it with other people, because there's no way that this is a coincidence that she literally wrote that a woman standing by her husband, because I don't know nothing about a boyfriend. I don't know nothing about struggling with a boyfriend. But a woman staying with her husband in the hard times of the marriage endears her to him in a way that money cannot buy. She becomes invaluable to him. How is it that this woman wrote this book in 1965, and in 2022 we have men who haven't read this book literally verbalizing the exact sentiment that she tried to tell us about earlier? I am, for one, very grateful for women like this, that she clearly was in line with the Lord, that he could share wisdom and knowledge with her, and that she was then faithful to put it in a book that now, 50, almost 60 years later, we can still be reading this book with the information it contains, applying it to our marriages, and seeing our marriages do better because of it. If you've been married for a while, in addition to sticking with your husband through the hard times, what are some of the things in marriage that you've seen that have endeared you to your husband, where your husband just looks at you and says, I am so thankful that I have you as my wife? Please include those things in the comment section below. But as always, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time.